Welcome everyone, good evening or good morning, depending on when you see this and where you are, of course. I would like to introduce my course, Philosophy as the Art of Living, Leisure with Dignity, Otium cum Dignitate. If you know anyone who's interested in the topic, share the link with them now, because enrollment has just opened and we begin our seminars in exactly 14 days. So there should be a link somewhere in the description of this video, I hope, to enroll. If not, then you will find it here also in the live chat right now, where you can enroll straight away. It's going to be a very, I think, intimate course, a bit of a smaller one than usually. And this is the course that started everything 2 years ago. So in early 2020, I taught the first course through my Halcyon Guild Academy, which was this one, Leisure with Dignity, the first online course I ever taught. And I think we had about 10 or 12 people enrolled. Some of you will know some of them at this point because they've been teaching their own courses. One of them is Daniel Zaruba. And now after 2 years, I finally have found time again to teach the course again. It's going to be running in parallel with my German Idealism course. That'll be Saturdays, and the Idleness or Leisure course will be on Sundays. Now, what are we going to read? It's an overview over the concept of, let's just say leisure for now in English, which will trace from the Greeks all the way to the technotopia fantasies of Bertrand Russell. So what we're going to read is an excerpt from Plato's Critias dialogue, where we learn that the Athenians all of a sudden realize that scolaire is already in the midst of them. We will also read an excerpt from Aristotle's Metaphysics and also from his Politics, where he says that scolaire is the arché of everything, is the ground of everything. Even though I have issues with this translation, because it in the sentence before, I think so usually that's translated as scolaire is the ground of everything, or leisure is the ground of everything. But I think it says more something to the effect of to be in scolaire and to be not in scolaire is the ground of everything. There's a simultaneity of the two. We'll also consider Cicero, and we won't read much from Cicero because he hasn't really developed any theory of otium, but what we get from Cicero is the principle of otium cum dignitate, leisure with dignity, which for a Roman is unusual, because for the Romans it was only possible to earn dignitas, dignity, in public affairs, meaning in nec otium, in the negation of otium, not in otium. And the entire, the basis of the course is based on my time at the University of Freiburg many years ago now, 7 years ago, which led to a publication in some academic journal on leisure with dignity, or idleness with dignity was the title. And so that's the basis for the course. We're going to read, after we leave antiquity behind, which is the first seminar, we move to the modern times. We read Wilhelm von Humboldt together and his ideas for an educational ideal, which is also, his ideal is very much in line with my ideal, which I hoped to find at university, but it wasn't quite as musisch, as leisurely as one would hope. One would hope, of course, that the university is a bulwark against the mechanization of the world and of life, but it is quite the opposite, unfortunately. You are required to produce not for the sake of knowledge or truth, but for the sake of production, and hence my departure from it. And once we've read Humboldt together, we'll read Nietzsche. There's especially in the gay science, there are quite a few passages. It's quite a long book, but still there's some passages where Nietzsche considers work and considers leisure and thinks through them, and also has a very good eye for what it is that's occurring and how a loss of leisure and idleness goes together with nihilism, really. By the way, if there are any questions, do let me know in the chat, and I'll respond when we're towards the end of the live stream. If you want to enroll, you can do so now. There's a link in the description of this video, and you can also, let me type this in. There's a coupon which you can use, so you can get $100 off the seminar tier. So I will explain in a second what we do in the course as well, apart from all the reading, etc. So after Nietzsche, we're reading Heidegger, or actually Bertrand Russell, In Praise of Idleness, because we're going chronologically. And this is an essay. When I first read it, I was surprised to see the old Russell almost humane in a way. But it turns out, of course, as we shall see, that his utopian vision for idleness is based on, on the idea that we need machines to do all the work, basically, right? And we need some ideas are still floating around that Russell here proposes, but it is also here something that you find everywhere. You find it, we're not reading Marx because it's ultimately what Marx says is quite boring. What does he say? Once the economic and the material problems have been solved, which is inevitable, because it's a purely deterministic universe, then we will arrive in scolaire. It's the old dialectics of work and leisure, which is a complete and crude misunderstanding of Aristotle. So you find that in all the Marxists, they're all the same. Sorry, there's nothing peculiar about any of them. It's always about some future utopian state that once we've arrived at that, then finally we are in leisure, because leisure is purely understood as an opposition to work. It's a false, superficial, external dialectic that we will consider it at the course, but we will try and find other ways of articulating being in scolaire, being idle and free, that do not deny, for example, work. Here's a beautiful quote from Sir Roger Scruton. Leisure is not the cessation of work, but work of another kind, work restored to its human meaning as a celebration and a festival. This is from his introductory remarks to Joseph Pieper's Leisure, the Basis of Culture. I'm looking around for the German version of the book, which I should have somewhere. I'm not entirely certain where it is. It's Muße und Kult in German. Not very well known actually in Germany anymore, but thanks to writers like T.S. Eliot and later on Roger Scruton, it became. So I think Pieper is much better known in Catholic circles in America than he is in Germany still. So I'm going to read this essay by Joseph Pieper as well, also because it is written right after the war, and he speaks of the total world of work, the totale Arbeitswelt, that takes over the human being, and that is a threat, if we take him seriously, to the very basis of our Occidental civilization, if we forget that it is grounded in leisure, ground, it's the arche, remember, as Aristotle said. There's not something that comes at the end, as the Marxists will make you believe, and all the techno-utopians, that one day when the machines have all taken over, then finally we'll be free and obsolete. That's a silly understanding of freedom. It's a childish understanding of freedom, because it's something, it's almost freedom is given to you in the end. It's very childish. So after Pieper and Russell will read Heidegger together. Martin Heidegger's memorial address, which he gave in honor of Konradin Kreutzer, which you will know from the Kreutzer Sonata, who was also from Meßkirch, where Heidegger was from. And in this memorial address from the 1950s, I suppose, Heidegger warns his listeners, the talk he gave, a public speech he held at Meßkirch, against condemning technology, but also he warns them against blindly and ignorantly accepting technology and science into their lives, forgetting what science and technology are. This is very much where we are now, of course, where science has become a ersatz religion for many. And so we can see that his notion of Releasement, Gelassenheit, is, of course, very much a response to the will to power active in what Nietzsche calls the uncanny wheelwork. This is also something we'll consider. We'll consider passages from Nietzsche which have not yet and probably won't be published in English. They're only available in German. There's a fragment which is on Nietzsche's economics, where he warns that human beings will be reduced to ever more finely adapted wheels in an uncanny wheelwork. You won't find this, I think, in many places, because, as I said, not been published into English, and not many scholars work at all with Nietzsche's, with the Nachlass, with the unpublished notebooks, or the posthumously published notebooks, I should say. So we'll also consider from Heidegger a story which he relates from Lao Tse on the useless tree, and why useless knowledge and useless something that is useless, that has no operative use, can have, of course, the most, in what sense it can have the most meaning to someone, precisely because it cannot be, well, I wouldn't say corrupted, but it cannot be exploited, as it were. A bit of a Marxist term, but still. So if you'd like to enroll, you can do so now. The link to enroll is in the description of this video. It's also in the live in the chat. If you have a question on the course specifically, let me know now. I'm going to talk a bit now about what the course will look like. So we're going to meet for, if you sign up, so there's 3 different tiers you can sign up for. The first one is self-study. You can enroll now. You get access to videos and the paper and also audio files, etc. You can listen to this for, as often as you want. It's exclusive. It's not on YouTube. So this is something I think sometimes maybe it's a bit confusing. It's got nothing to do with YouTube. I only announce it here, but you will sign up on a platform called Teachable. So no one else, if you don't enroll, you won't get access to it. And the middle tier is usually what most people sign up for. That's where you get 7 seminars, live group seminars over Zoom, which I lead. So there's no TA. I'm the TA, if you like. I lead the seminars. What we do during the seminars is, depending on group size, I think this is going to be quite an intimate course, but we will still have sessions, group sessions, where you just are in a group of 2 or 3 perhaps, discussing a couple of questions at the beginning of every seminar after I introduce the topic. Then we bring you back and have a group discussion for another hour. So we meet for 2 hours every week, starting Sunday, June 19th at 6 p.m. UK time. That's British summer time. And there will be a reading week at the end of July, so there's no seminar for that weekend, which gives you enough time to do what? To prepare for the final seminar, the 7th seminar, first weekend of August, where you can present a talk. And as I said, if you have questions, just let me know in the chat. And at the same time, if you want to write short essays during the 7 weeks of the course, then you can do so. You can send me up to 2 essays on study questions that are about 500, 700 words or so long, and I will provide you with commentary on how you can improve your writing, or what else you might want to look at, want to read or so. So we'll make sure that you have got something to present at the end of it, but also that you learn how to write. Now, I have written a book, I've written tons of articles, and still constantly, of course, writing lectures, I also give talks, and I still publish also academically. So we can, you get some, I would say, profound commentary on it, and I'll take it seriously what you have to say. And then the third tier, the third study option you can choose from is, and there's only, I think, 2 available because I don't have all that much time. But if you want to have private one-on-one tutorial sessions with me to discuss the material even in greater detail also, or if you think that I can be of help with the project, if maybe you're writing something on the work-leisure dialectic, or something on leisure itself as a phenomenon, very important. This is not a sociology course. This is not a moralizing course. We're not coming together to moralize about anything. We're trying to understand a fundamental phenomenon and fundamental concept of human flourishing and being. So, and by the way, this course, you get 6 private sessions with me. That's the third tier. If you follow the link, everything is stated there. So you'll find the course summary, you'll find the seminar dates, everything on Teachable, and enrollment is now open. If you, someone just enrolled, thank you very much. I'm not going to say who, I don't want to mention your names. So thank you for that. If anyone has any questions, just let me know. So while perhaps you have a look at the Teachable website, the homepage where you can enroll, I go over again just one more time the 6 lectures. So we'll begin in antiquity. We'll begin with Cicero and Plato's Critias and Aristotle's metaphysics. It is in the metaphysics that he says that we find through leisure, through scolaire, only access to philosophy, really. But it all hinges on how we understand what he has to say and what Plato has to say. Usually, how we understand it is we arrive at leisure, let's just say leisure, after having secured all material conditions. That's how the Critias passage is translated. That's how we usually translate Aristotle. But that would make no sense then if we also take into consideration that Aristotle says in the Politics that scolaire is the arché of everything, that leisure is the ground of everything. So it's not something we only arrive at later, but it is something in which life is grounded, and not just grounded in an arbitrary way, but it's the ground, the arché of all. After antiquity, so we won't read Seneca, for example, even though Seneca has got much to say, obviously, on otium, we will leave out Seneca for the simple reason that So also with Cicero, we take the title from Cicero's principle Ultium cum dignitate, but especially with the Romans, more so even I think than with the Greek, even though of course it's centered on the polis, which is Athens, but it seems to be that it's more that the Greek way of thinking is almost more, in some sense, I hesitate to say the word universal, but it's more, it lends itself more to a polis that could come about for the sake of the idea. And I think with Rome, with Roman writers, it's so extremely connected to res publica, which is specifically Rome, la città eterna, that we cannot really. We can learn something about Rome. We can learn something about how they understood Otium, etc. We may not be able to see the phenomenon itself. This is what the Greeks always allow us to do. They're so immediately with the phenomena, with the things themselves in question, that we can see in a and if we begin to see what they saw, then we can ground again for us another way of being that could translate what they saw and what they saw as necessary and important for our time. So hence we focus more on the Greeks and the Romans, and hence we also leave Seneca out and a few others, of course, because I don't think the Romans really fully say they're copycats, aren't they? Well, that's a bit mean. Anyways, we move on then to Wilhelm von Humboldt. We read on the University Ideal, which is also, I take a lot from his educational ideal and try to incorporate it and bring it to flourishment in my courses and at my own academy here. So if you don't know, if you just stumble across this and see me for the first time, I have a PhD in philosophy. I have published a book on Heidegger and several papers on different topics, one of them on leisure. I've spent a lot of time at university researching the phenomenon of leisure, but I've left academia behind for several reasons. One of them is that it is no longer a stronghold, which is what it should be, of Ultium cum dignitate, of leisure with dignity. It has instead become an uncanny wheelwork. So, hence, I have disappeared. I have made myself unavailable and have been building for more than 2 years now my own online academy, which is called Halcyon Guild Cathedral of Learning, as I call it this year. It's called Halcyon for a specific reason. If you know anything about Greek mythology, you might know why it's called Halcyon. I won't mention it tonight. But let me just say that, so if you're new, I'm a free scholar, as I refer to myself, not independent, because independent seems to imply dependence in some sense still. And one of the best ways to support my work here and all the videos that I can put out for the public is by signing up for a course. You don't just get a course that I teach for you and with you, and you get to meet others who are also interested in philosophy and the finer things in life. You can also consider yourself a patron of the arts, because it helps me to keep going. So if you're just coming in now, you can enroll via the link in the description of this video, or you'll find it also in the live chat. And if you have questions, just let me know. So after Wilhelm von Humboldt's educational ideal, will move to Nietzsche on idleness and nihilism. To Nietzsche, the acceleration of time in modernity is itself a symptom of the increasing nihilism. Becoming a sovereign individual is for Nietzsche the way out from the slave morality of the worker. And by the way, he thinks that everyone is a worker, not just the working class or so, but especially the so-called elites have become utterly and completely members of the herd, prey to slave morality. We will also read Bertrand Russell in Praise of Idleness. When I first read this many years ago, I thought, oh, well, here he is. He has got something to say that's not completely insane. But unfortunately, he and his other friends from that time, who was it, Wells, John Maynard Keynes and all the other boys, maybe the Huxleys also, they, of course, I mean, Keynes, I forgot what the essay was. His essay is around the same time as Bertrand Russell writes this essay. Keynes says somewhere, or argues in a paper, that we will now have to use, it's 1920s, we will now have to use usury for the next 100 years, so that in the 21st century, our children can live off of the substance forevermore and won't have to work anymore. But until that can be reached, we have to be greedy, awful bastards who use usury like it's never been seen before. You see, this idea, of course, is not new. This is the modern paradox, really. This is the Faustian pact that apparently we all have to make. Mandeville, in his Fable of the Bees, argues something quite similar, that the worst vices will lead to the most virtuous society in capitalism. So Bertrand Russell argues something along the lines. It's quite a good essay, really. He's not, he's aware of the importance of celebration and ceremony and festivity, and understands also that this is not an elite project, but there are festive days, reminds us of the Middle Ages, etc., of peasantry. But still, I wonder why he then still thinks that this can only be reached when, as what he calls technique, we would say technology, has so far improved that the human being won't have to work anymore, really. Again, this comes back to the work leisure dialectic, that's in place and at work and operative everywhere here, but it's never questioned. What we really want to get out of in this course is this false dialectic of work and leisure, because it always leads to the same old tired questions that do not allow us to see the original content and weight of the phenomenon of scolaire, which is what we want to see. Everything else just leads down the same old trodden path. So with Russell, he falls back into it, and it's important to be able to see these with these essays, and how and why they argue the way they do. And we will have the basis coming from Plato and from Aristotle. Lecture 5 will be Heidegger on releasement. We'll read the memorial address I mentioned before. By the way, if you do have questions, just let me know now, because I'm leaving very soon. And if you want to enroll, you can do so right now. If you know anyone who's interested in the phenomenon of leisure, let them know, because we'll begin this course in exactly 14 days. So if you know anything about Heidegger, you will have heard of the term Gelassenheit, which they translate in English as releasement, not the most elegant translation, because it's an invention. And Gelassenheit is a normal German word, so it's not an invention by Heidegger. Perhaps being released or releasing oneself into is maybe, I know it's also a bit of a mouthful, but slightly more elegant, I think. So how to be released in the epoch of a technological will to power that wants to control and manipulate, that requires us, who still want to think, at least for a second, to question what technology and science really are, instead of falling for the reflex that you've seen, trust the science and all this nonsense. It's become very apparent what it leads to when you have, when no one asks any questions anymore, doesn't understand the scientific methodology, or that it is a methodology. And not a way of thinking. But still, after Heidegger, we read, and this is the final lecture and seminar, we read Joseph Pieper on total work. His essay in English is translated Leisure, the basis of civilization. For Pieper, something fundamental has been lost in modernity. The sense that leisure is the basis of human culture. Instead, we succumb to total work, the total world of work. And Pieper reminds his readers in 1946 that it is leisure that is at the heart of the Occident. Not work, not the work-leisure dialectic, but Muße itself. Muße und Kult, as he says. Muße und Kultus. And yeah, this is life. So if there are any genuine questions on the course, do let me know now. And if not, I'll just say again, we will meet. Seminars begin in 2 weeks. There are three study options that you can choose from. The first one is just self-study. So you can enroll, not on YouTube, this is a different platform. You get access to an exclusive lecture course, video files, audio, and paper. And you can work through it on your own time. The middle tier is the Philosophical Fellowship, where we meet during live seminars over Zoom, beginning June 19th, always from 6 to 8 p.m. UK time. I lead the seminars. And when you sign up, you not only get, you meet other people, etc., but you also, I will read your essays if you write some up to 2 during the time. And you can present your own talk at the end of the course. So that means the first weekend of August, because there's a week in between where we take a break, so you have enough time to prepare something, and so you can so there will be enough build-up time for you to write something, get commentary from me, and then also be able to present something at the end. If you if you want, we can publish that on YouTube. That's usually what I do. There's a good group and the talks are really good. I publish the whole thing on YouTube. If you have a project, we had a musician in the last course who is a young gentleman from America who wrote a song, I think, inspired by the course. So we linked, of course, also to his band website or profile on one of the, I think on Spotify or so. So if you have any project or so that you'd like to be linked to, if you have a website or you write a blog, etc., whatever people do, then we can, of course, link to it. If you write a poem inspired by the course, and we can, of course, include this too. You can present your poem, and then the highest tier is everything from the lower tiers plus 6 private tutorials with me, where we can either read in greater detail the text that we go through, and I can answer your questions better. If you have a writing project, maybe I can support you with that. But of course, it should be focused on either of the thinkers, and of course also on leisure. So, question from Magdalena Stakura. Sorry, I do apologize, but probably mispronounced. So Magdalena asks, question, is this for philosophers? You think a simple language teacher would manage to understand it all? Yes. So, yeah, this is something I should have said. Thank you, Magdalena, for bringing this up. So I should have said this in the beginning. So I'm very grateful to Magdalena for reminding me of this. So specifically, this course I think is overall probably the easiest course that I teach, given that the readings are very short, given that it's a very accessible topic. It's something that we are all concerned with because it concerns our life in terms of our jobs and work, and as I mentioned before, its relationship with time, with our free time, our time that's free from work. So we all are, there's a genuine fundamental need that addresses us here. And hence I think it's easy. But the texts themselves, I mean, if you read, just have a look at Bertrand Russell's In Praise of Idleness. It's one of the, it's beautiful English. Russell is a masterful writer, and so that text will be very easily accessible. And also, I've seen something else. Now, as I mentioned, this is probably the easiest course, but I've seen. So I never say that people should come with preparation, because it's the problem with the problem. Okay, it's not a problem, but the issue with philosophy is this: you have to begin somewhere. Yeah. And maybe you shouldn't begin with Hegel's Science of Logic. Maybe you begin with a dialogue by Plato. But every single text has its own difficulties. And of course, everything, when you boil it down, it becomes more and more complex and difficult, yes. But still, even when I had teach very difficult courses, for example, last year, a course on early Greek thinkers, Heraclitus and Parmenides and a few others, I am continuously surprised by who shows up, what they do, what their backgrounds are. And then after a couple of courses, they start to write, they start presenting. These are projects that they may have had before, I don't know, but it comes out. So you have to do some work, yeah, and but there will be enough guidance through the 7-8 weeks that we meet here. And overall, I think there's no need for having any knowledge or so already. Sometimes it can be even more helpful to have no sort of academic philosophical knowledge, because that can impede to a certain degree unoriginal access to the phenomena that we are concerned with here. So, and if you are a language teacher, then of course it's all the better, because I'm German, speak a bit of English, speak Italian, a bit of French. I read ancient Greek, I can read Latin, and I will also always go back and forth between different translations. So I try to find words in English that transport what perhaps something says in Greek, but it's not really there in the official translation, etc. And you will see also the seminars, they've been described by others as, by participants as, what university should have been. That was something someone said last year. They're usually also very grateful because it allows one to read texts, allows you to read texts that maybe you would have been too shy or too respectful or so to even approach. And you see that it's possible to read Plato and Aristotle. Yeah, so Magdalena, I think, given that you've already done some philosophy in Poland, and Poland has a fantastic public schooling system and a very good university system, I think you will be well equipped, given also that you know languages, etc. So, okay, here's a question, but that I can't answer here, because it's on time. So first of all, but what I can answer is with a no. So time cannot be defined. In philosophy, a definition is very specific. It has a genus, a species, and qualifications. Yeah. So time is not a thing. So it cannot be defined. We can determine time, bestimmen, give it a voice, as it were, but we do not. And also, I think maybe the question is also a bit strange, because it's not a stupid question, but so when we talk about time, you say, how could we describe time? It's a good question because it's at the heart of the problem of leisure, but it's such a massive question. This is what the seminars are there for. So, but but what we can see, that I mentioned before, Plato and Aristotle, and then this build-up of the work-leisure dialectic. And by the way, if you're interested in this, there's a video on my channel. I'll find it in a second, okay? So, sorry, it's Oikonomia Scholeia, which is a talk I wrote last year. So I'm gonna share it here, so you can listen to that one, which considers time and considers a certain understanding of time, which we can find an access to scolaire, let's just say genuine leisure, that is outside the dialectic, and I think also because of a certain oblivion of time in the buildup of metaphysics, that this warps, confuses our understanding of leisure today, so that it becomes free time. By the way, so this is why the English word to me is horrible, leisure, because leisure comes from plaisir. Basically it's the same word as license. Do you have a license, mate? As they say here. So if you have leisure, then you have a licensed free time from work. That's what leisure means. This is why leisure is really a poor translation for scolaire in Greek, or for Muße in German. Muße in German has a spatial dimension to it, a tempo-spatial dimension. So, very good question. Time will be, as they say, of the essence at the course. And it is, of course, as you know, in philosophy, it's all intertwined, as you see when you read a bit more. You cannot ask the question for being without asking the question for time. So, and you cannot ask any question in philosophy without having asked for scolaire and leisure first. I mention again, as Aristotle says in the Politics, that scolaire is the arché of everything, the original ground of all. And again, here's Sir Roger Scruton. Leisure is not the cessation of work, but work of another kind. Work restored to its human meaning as a celebration and a festival. And we will have 7 weeks of festival, as it's a Sunday evening that I'll be teaching this. I might be drinking some wine sometimes. And yeah, so thank you very much. This non-question here at the end, so this is very typical. There's someone here who asks, why is someone ignored? No one is ignored. Okay, this is the usual question you get in an academic setting, where you present a talk and then it said, oh, but you forgot to mention. Oh, yeah, you can always forget to mention something. Do you know? Do you understand why? Do you understand why that happens? Because maybe the systematicity of the question as it unfolds does not lend itself to have included what you think should be included. So these are non-questions. And someone like this should not enroll. I want people who ask questions, real questions. So thank you very much. I welcome you all to enroll now, and come join me in 2 weeks for a leisurely summer. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.